Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to another live. Speaking on the mindset of the incarcerated. However, this will be geared towards sexual assault of inmates inside the prison system. However, we are very familiar with the PREA program that they established in the penal system I know of in Alabama back in, roughly speaking, 2002, 2003, somewhere in that range. However, that PREA system is all over the United States, whether you're doing state time or federal time. It's mandated for the protection of the inmates that's incarcerated. We all know that sexual assault is prevalent in the penal system. Mothers of sons incarcerated, listen up, listen up, and listen up. Because I will try to give you some numbers and some figures that you will be aware of and some things that you can somewhat discuss with your loved one behind the fence or behind the gate of the prison system. Roughly, we know that prison rape commonly refers to the rape of inmates in prison by other inmates or prison staff. We know it happens. And according to the Human Rights Watch, they have estimated that at least 4.3 million inmates had been raped while incarcerated in the United States. Again, the Human Rights Watch estimated that at least 4.3 million of those that was incarcerated was prison raped by another inmate. Our United States Department of Justice, which is the DOJ, reported sexual victimization in prisons and jails reported by inmates states that in 2011 through 2012, which that was a couple of years on back, however, the numbers might be lower, what I'm saying, but they will not go lower than that because they is more accurately widespread and they're higher. But again, according to the United States Department of Justice, they reported sexual victimization in prisons and jails that was reported by inmates now. States that an estimated 4.0% of state and federal inmates and 3.2% of jail inmates reported experiencing one or more incidents of sexual victimization by another inmate or facility staff in the past 12 months, or since admission to the facility if less than 12 months. However, advocates dispute the accuracy of these numbers because we know they're going to do that, saying they underreport the real numbers of sexual assaults in prison, especially among juveniles. We know that the state will cover up, the federal system will cover up as well. They are saying these numbers is what they should be, but we know that these numbers are much, much lower than what they should be or what should have been reported. These numbers roughly speak on what the state could not hide or the federal system could not hide, and they had to actually put these numbers out there. Again, they estimated 4.0% of state and federal prison inmates and 3.2% of jail inmates reported that experiencing one or more incidents of sexual victimization. That's some wild numbers in it, just for what they reported. So we ask ourselves, this is supposed to be a place where you is sentenced to do your time. You should be guarded by the staff or the facility workers. Not just say a safe haven, but you should be well protected from predators. Now, if we look into what are some of the risk factors of victimization and perpetration, why are these men being victimized? Why are these men being raped inside the walls of the prison system? What's going on? Well, some of these factors that the researchers have looked into is race, size, or stature. Also, the age awkwardness. Some appear to be intellectually challenged. A lot of them not being affiliated with a gang. Some of them appearing to be homosexual or being disliked by peers and staff. These are the ones that reported a prior history of sexual victimization. A lot of them that is what we consider clutched out or victimized come from what we consider middle background or middle class background. So many of them lack assertiveness, meaning that they are not the ones that can put up a fight against the bully or the predator. And this is very concerning because this is what caused the possibility of victimization. A lot of them, like I said, come from middle class background, and they is very subject to being a target, or one that appears to be weak in certain areas. They're the ones that is prey for the predator. And the predators, we know, can actually seek their victims out. You know, there has been less research on risk factors for perpetration, but a few factors have nevertheless been identified, and I just said that. Number of prior incarcerations is one of them. History of predation or violence, the length of sentence, extent of criminal history, size or stature, duration of current sentence that has been served. Again, the race is a factor, is an element, the age, and the type of crime that they have committed. These are the ones that have a very high risk of being victimized by the predators, especially when it comes to the crime that they commit. So mothers, for the ones that are incarcerated, please take note to what I'm saying and question your loved ones when they give you a phone call, when you go visit them, if they're acting a little strange, because remember the videos that I sent prior to this one that I'm going to send out was speaking on the mindset of the incarcerated. So be mindful of what I'm saying. Some of the things that I say is where it's not pleasant to the ear, but it must be said. And sexual assault is notorious in some prison facilities. Alabama is one of the ones that I can speak on and give you history upon it. The Alabama prison system is notorious for sexual misconduct. It is notorious for sexual assault, whether it be by another inmate or a facility worker. You all will hear me say a lot that lies don't figures and figures don't lie. And it's true. We know that a lot of European American, their descent, if you're a European, that is a very high factor of victimization. The few studies that I have looked at is how race may impact the likelihood of perpetration of sexual violence and assault. Found that majority of victims said their perpetrator had been of African American. Much of the early research has been described by the Bureau of Justice Statistics as too small for valid generalization about the entire U.S. correctional population to be made. And we know that's true. It is very sad, but it's true. Most research on size and stature as a risk factor has lacked explicit definitions of what exact measurements would warrant a large or small characterization. And still to this day, studies more often find that perpetrators tend to be larger than their victims. Although there has been research conducted that concluded that victims tend to be overweight or small or large in stature, with perpetrators being of an average weight. This is the predator. If you were to watch shows like Nature or anything like that, majority of the time, the predator that seeks out the prey is bigger than the prey. However, if the prey is larger than the predator, then the predators have what they call like the wolf pack to bring down their prey. And this happens inside the walls and the prison facility. We call it the cludging game, meaning you have 2, 3, or more on one. It's like a wolf pack, and they will bring that victim down. It goes on. It happens. It has also been conflicting conclusions regarding whether perpetrators tend to be older or younger than the general prison population. But it has consistently been found that perpetrators tend to be younger than their victims, with one study finding that victimized inmates were on an average about 20 to 21 years of age. This is a high risk. So I'm speaking to the mothers that has their loved ones, their son in prison, to take heed of what I am giving out on the video. You might have to go back and listen to it 2 or 3 times to get a pretty good understanding of what I'm saying. One study found that a homosexual with sexual orientation was a risk factor for perpetration, and a heterosexual sexual orientation before one was incarcerated was a risk factor for victimization. But much of the other research that has been done on this topic conflicts with this conclusion. One study had found that 7 out of every 10 inmates who identify themselves as bisexual or homosexual reported being sexually assaulted in prison. And another study had found that homosexual inmates were 2.3 times as likely as heterosexual inmates to be the targets of sexual assault. Again, for the mothers with sons incarcerated, be mindful of your loved one. Ask them questions. We're not here on the video tonight to speak down on the bisexual or the homosexual. I'm only giving information about the sexually assaulted ones that's incarcerated. On the onset, what I said about the ones being bisexual or homosexual, that will be on a later date as I come up. Multiple authors have concluded that openly positive opinions of homosexual behaviors or homosexuality in general has generally increased the risk of victimization. And I will have information for more on this topic. Staff of the prison system frequently help place inmates into particular housing units to lower an inmate's risk of harm. This is what they're trying to do now. But effectively evaluating risk during inmate intake is an ongoing issue. You know, these are things that's ongoing. That's why now they is building 3 mega prisons in the state of Alabama. And one of those prisons should be operable the month of October. You know, as conventional tools for evaluating risk have time it has commitment and a background information, meaning it requires that unreasonable satisfied things during the intake, meaning a lot of them would not be honest with the intake officer, and it should be. Again, to the mothers with the sons that are incarcerated, these are the things you have to ask yourself. Like I said, some things will not be pleasant to the ear, but you have to ask your son, not excluding daughters, but specifically, I'm speaking about the sons now, because this is a video that's going directly to that group. So you ask your sons, do they have these tendencies? Have they ever been approached? Do they feel afraid? I know they're not going to be comfortable in a situation. Hell, who will be comfortable inside a prison? However, these are questions that must be asked to your loved ones. Because incarceration in the state of Alabama is very overcrowded, and there is other states too. I'm not looking over the other states as well, like North, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, because the same thing is going on. But I'm speaking to the mothers of the incarcerated, regardless of what state they're in. And I'm giving you firsthand knowledge of what goes on behind the wall of the prison system. They do not have enough prison guards to oversee the population. And the ones that they do have is not doing their damn job. We see that as we go through the inmate site. We see the unaliving of inmates daily. There was a young guy that was just unalive today at Ventress Correctional Facility. We will speak on that in a couple of days when all the information comes in. So, mothers of the incarcerated, please be mindful, take heed, take notes of the videos that I have sent. Be mindful of what I have said. If there's anything that I have said that is inaccurate, please pull my coattail and bring me up to my awareness. However, the information that I put out, it is factual evidence of what goes on behind the gates, behind the walls of the prison system. Because we know sexual assault bring on what we call a psychological effect. That's why we constantly speak on the mindset of the incarcerated, because it is broad. It has a spectrum that covers everything when you talk about the incarcerated, the mindset of the incarcerated. According to the report conducted by the Bureau of Justice, inmates with serious psychological distress reported high rates of inmate on inmate and staff sexual assault. This is why they is trying to do something about the mental stability of the inmates. They is doing what they call a longer or lengthier evaluation of the psyche once they come into the prison system. Because we know during time, not only you might have these mental disturbance, but as you enter into the prison system, it's going to create more disturbance. But we don't want to get off the topic tonight. We want to stay strictly on sexual assault. It is said that an estimated 6.3% of federal prison inmates with serious psychological distress reported to have been sexually victimized by another inmate, in comparison to 0.7% of inmates with no serious mental illness. Now you got, like I say, lies don't figures and figures don't lie. Remember what I said. The federal system said that they have an estimated of 6.3% of the ones that being sexually assaulted have some type of mental distress. On the other side, the ones who does not have a serious mental illness is only 0.7%. 0.7%. And on the flip side of that, the ones that have mental illnesses is 6.3%. Damn, that's a big difference. So we ask ourselves, have prison became the prominent housing unit for mental disturbed people? Of course it has. Whether they're a sociopath or psychopath. Similar statistics were reported for non-heterosexual inmates who reported higher rates of inmate-on-inmate sexual victimization. 21%, again, 21% of prison inmates and 14.7% of jail inmates with serious psychological distress reported being sexually assaulted. Look at the numbers. Look at the figures. Add it up. Lies don't figures and figures don't lie. Add it up. So ask your loved ones about the situation that they're in. See what's going on when they make the phone calls, when you make the visits, when you check on them. There's so many people coming across the groups now saying, have you heard from my low at such and such prison? Can you give me information? Can someone in the group um, give me some type of validation that nothing is going on at Limestone, Donaldson, Ventris, Bullock, Kilby, and the list goes on. So we must make these phone calls to these wardens, which we know that, hey man, they're going to give us a bunch of baloney. But like I said, we got to keep hitting that rusty nail until it penetrates. Either that rusty nail is going to penetrate or we're going to break it. Point blank. Continue to put the hammer on that nail. If it bends, we know we're doing something. If it breaks, we're doing something. However, when it penetrates, we on our damn way. Now we making progress. So that's what we got to do. This is one particular segment about sexual assault. I will give more information to the group as we channel ourselves through the Charlotte's Web. We will continue to venue. We will continue to get information that is very informative to our loved ones and also to the ones that's outside in what we consider the free world. We will continue that. So like always, I leave you as I came, with peace, love, and happiness. And let's continue that journey and let's move on. July 29th is going to be a game changer in Alabama. 29th July is going to be a game changer in Montgomery because we're going to be on the steps of Montgomery, the capital of Alabama. July 29th, 9 o'clock, when your doors open up, you'll see us. This is a non-violent protest. However, this is a protest that we want answers about our loved ones. We're going to continue because with voices, we will be heard, and with unity, we will be magnificent. Until the next time, take care.